Welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Matters and another half an hour of interesting conversations regarding mental health in the world and in your life, and thinking about what we can create with our futures today, what we can do to make a difference in our lives and those around us by how we're thinking who we want to create ourselves to be today and how are we going to get to tomorrow. So use that prefrontal cortex and think a little bit through our executive functioning abilities. How's that for the terms of the day? To think about that next stage for ourselves and the world and those we love around us. All right. You're listening to Mental Health Matters at KRUU FM 100.1 on your FM dial, archived everywhere. And today we're doing part 2 with Jim Davis, because we were having so much fun that we thought we'd keep going here. And Jim's going to start off. He's going to introduce himself, and then we're going to talk about a little bit more about this, who he is as a business guy and how this whole flow matters. So, Jim, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Scott. Great to...
Yes, I should mention this is Dr. Scott Terry, and I am a practicing marriage and family therapist, educational psychologist, counselor. I supervise and run the Arden Counseling Center, the Arden Community Wellness Center, the Fairfield Mental Health Alliance, with a bunch of other people trying to make a difference in this community. Restarting Relationships, where I do couples retreats and intensive work. Okay, I think that's enough of my thing. Enough of me.
You're a psychological entrepreneur.
Oh, I'm a crazy person. All right.
I'm not going to get off topic here, but some of the craziest people I've met are psychologists. So.
Oh, yeah. We don't need to go there. That's so
we won't go there.
Okay.
So, I'm known as a business person. I'm not quite sure how I got there, because that really wasn't how I got started, but I think I might have mentioned to you either on the air or off the air, I actually got started in the field of education, and I actually was a school teacher for a year before I got into business. And but I thought, well, I had a break. Actually, it was a thought of good timing, but it was also there was motivation as well. I had taught school 1 year. It was junior high school. It was the first year that they hadn't had corporal punishment at the school. The kids were taunting the teachers all the time, like, you can't make me behave. You know, I was a starry-eyed young kid thinking we're going to make a difference in the world, and I realized that if I could just get them to sit down and be quiet and read a few of the assignments I gave them, we would have accomplished a lot. So it was a little less than I had expected. But then at the end of the year, when the school principal asked me to come back next year, he said, but I do want one thing. He says, I need an assistant football coach. Now, you're looking at me, and the listeners aren't, but at the time I was 5'11" and 135 pounds, and I was definitely not your prototypical assistant football coach. And I said, you can give me assistant basketball coach, assistant baseball coach. I was pretty good at those. If you want to do a cross-country team, I ran cross-country. I could probably coach it, but don't give me football. I said, they'd eat me up. He says, well, I don't need those. I need football. I said, I'm just not your guy. And he says, well, think about it, but I'd like you to come back and teach, but I need you to be the assistant coach. So I decided I'm going to go on and get my master's degree in education, and in particular in administration, so I could go back and become an administrator myself someday. At least I'd have the qualifications. Well, in the process of doing that, it took longer than I anticipated. I needed some money, so I started a business on the side with photography, which was my hobby and passion, and it's always good to, if you're trying to follow a profession, do something that's your passion as well, because you'll have a lot more staying power.
Good thing for everybody to remember. Again, follow your passions. Do something to make a difference in the world. Do something to not just make money, but be who you need to be. I think we all forget this at times. We get lost in, we got to make money, we got to survive. And the more we think about surviving, the more we need surviving. Mm-hmm. And then we have what's this creep that goes on. I forgot the exact term. It's a wonderful concept of thinking about our habit creeps. And one of the interesting things, as I start making more money, well, then I increase my lifestyle. I'm making more money, so I need a nicer car, and then of course it costs me more money to maintain the car, which means I need more money, and we get caught in this lifestyle problem instead of remembering, why are we alive? Life's short. What do we want to create? And coming back to that purpose in life every day. Even if you're making money, then fine. Then do something to make a difference, and not just live, but really live. And so you're saying you came back to that. You're saying, okay, yes, I want to follow my passions.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I really, my passion was to do photography. And I really thought, but I'm not going to be helping other people if I do photography. I could help other people if I'm a educator, if I'm a school teacher, and make a difference in lives. But I don't know. I guess having had the experience of 1 year of teaching, I thought, I'm not making as much of a difference as I hoped I would, and I really want to try this photography thing. And so I tried it. And got a few accounts. I called some people. I had an idea what I could do. I put some business together, and I ran across somebody else who was doing photographs of graduations. And I thought, well, now that's pretty cool, and I bet people would like to buy those pictures. It actually turned out to be successful. I tried it in Chicago and the tri-state area there of Wisconsin and Indiana. The other guy was doing it in the Southwest. So we weren't competing at all, never did. And I built a business, and I brought in partners, good friends who I knew from other things. Hey, need some help here. It's starting to have success. But it became clear pretty soon on that this was helping people. These were moments of achievement. People want to remember moments of achievement. It gives them something to reflect on when I think, well, I did something great in my life. I had this goal. I finished school. I got a degree.
Absolutely. Or I did a marathon.
And that was the later thing. We did marathons,
difference.
And that came along a few years after the graduation thing. So yeah, you were going to.
No. I mean, I think this whole thing of like following our passions is really important. It's like we're all want to make a difference, but making a difference. Yes, you're making a difference in multiple ways. One, you're celebrating people's lives with them, the most important moments. They're graduating, or they're finishing a marathon, or whatever it is. But it's also, you're making a difference because you're being who you need to be, so you can make a difference in your family and those around you, and you're supporting. So making a difference isn't always as direct as we think, but sometimes, like we're going to talk about PTSD relief in Africa, and again, making a difference sometimes is direct, and sometimes it's leveraging what we can do to make a difference.
Absolutely, Scott. And and that part of making a difference is one of the things that many success seminars will teach you is that you need to give back to others, to the community. And so that's maybe an indirect leverage. You can help other activities that are helping others. You can do them directly through your personal time that you invest. You can do it through the money you invest. Nice to be able to do both if you have the time to do both, but at least you're good to give some money to those causes that help improve the lives of others. And it helps us personally as well. It's there's some gratification that comes from knowing that you did something good and not just something to make money. So that is, do we want to lead in perhaps to how I got involved with?
Absolutely.
So as an entrepreneur, You think of business ways that will make more money. But by
the way, you didn't just create a small business. You created a rather large business. You became the largest how would you say that?
Well, you could say special event photography business. And we were merged with other smaller ones over the years,
Absolutely.
Some of which we bought and some of which others bought.
So this is not just a little
side,
yes. I'm going to be a photographer. Eventually, it turned into a real large business.
Well, if you could say that entrepreneurs have a psychological condition of infinite expansion. They're always they're serial. Like, what more can I do? I could do this. Well, you can't do everything.
Yeah, I'm a millionaire, but now I need 10 million. Now I need 10 million, so now I need 100 million.
Yeah,
it's like everything's relative, and it's never enough.
It's never enough.
And so it's kind of getting, and that comes back to this thing about passion, having it be enough. That it's okay to be who you are today, and then to create tomorrow,
right?
Or create tomorrow today, to develop who you want to do,
right?
To look at your vision, your goals, your game plan, and your action steps to get there. And we'll talk more about that in the future. But to look at who you are, who you truly want to be, and then why am I doing what am I doing? What do I actually create to do? And then what are the action steps? How am I actually doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And so going through the whole process really makes a difference. By the way, you're listening to Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry on KRUU FM, 100.1 on your FM dial, and archived everywhere. You could email us at mentalhealthmatters@kruufm.com. And you could also email me if you ever need me directly, scott@ardencenter.com. But Jim, we're talking to Jim today, wide-ranging topics. So you were going to follow up with this. Go on.
Well, the expansion of what more can I do? It makes the business bigger. Fortunately, the business was at least not doing bad things to other people.
Yeah.
And it was helping them feel better about their life. So you can feel good in that sense, and we've found other things that we could expand into, and the business grew in different ways of event photography, marathons in particular being one of them. That was a moment of achievement in people's lives, and they the people who were running marathons bought those pictures quite well also, and they made collages and shared them with relatives and friends, and sponsors who had given them money if they were raising money for a social cause. But aside from that, somewhere it's nice to follow these principles of success, and they go way back. They're popular now, but they're based on old principles and biblical principles for that matter, and probably every other religious tradition has them as well. That you need to be giving back some amount of what you have. And so if you're an entrepreneur, you can just, as you said, turn 1 million into 10 and 10 into 100 and 100 into 1 billion. Or somewhere along the way you can say, how can I leverage this extra money that I have that I don't really need, and there's only so many cars and yachts that I ultimately need, or otherwise it just gets complicated, and maybe it gets complicated before you even get the second car if you're lucky,
or the
just
second yacht if you're in the middle of Iowa and there's not a whole lot of lakes here.
So there's not a lot of lakes.
Yeah.
So you look at the whole thing and you say, okay, what can I do to help other people? And then you can let your expansion run in that direction. How can we make a difference in that way? And it's not for profit. It's for the profit of society. It's the benefit of society then.
But again, as we talked in the previous episode, all love is directed to the self. And as you increase the society wealth, it impacts you because then people have more money to spend on your products.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's self-serving.
It's self-serving.
You feel good along the way, and you feel even better in the end result when your business gets even more successful because the economy is doing well.
And as you make a difference in other people's lives, they want to contribute to the life that you're trying to create. So
exactly.
It's all circular.
It's all circular. And so bringing the circle forward, I had an opportunity, and it came about. A friend we're taking a walk together, and he said,
David Shapiro, that is.
David Shapiro.
The founder of PTSD Relief Now?
Yes.
.org?
Yes.
Okay.
And he had the idea, he said, he had found out that you could teach the Transcendental Meditation technique to people in Africa for very little money. And we both knew from personal experience that the practice of that technique could be extremely valuable in people's lives. And when you think about how much change could take place in a person's life for such a little investment, I said, that's incredible. And he said, I actually he had found out, and you'll have to ask him in a separate interview, Scott, on how he came to find out about this group of refugees, Congolese refugees, that were most of whom had severe PTSD, that there was a TM teacher available to teach them the technique, and he said, would you chip in some money to pay for their course fees? I've got the teacher, and the people are there, they want to learn. So, as a social entrepreneur, I thought, well, I can't get much more value out of my investment than I can on this one, so why not? And then he had the foresight to have some video interviews of a few of the people, the ones who spoke English, and there were extremely moving stories of the changes that it made in their life. In fact, they're still available on the website for PTSD Relief Now if one wants to view those interviews. Esperanza in particular is an incredibly well-spoken person, but she has a story that is amazing. So that conversation led to more conversations. That initial investment led me to help him frame some ideas. They were mostly his ideas. He was bouncing them off a number of other people as well at the same time. I'm sure you're interviewing each of them individually as we go and getting their angle on the story. But his inspiration fairly clearly on was we need to have some standardized psychological tests to see if it's not just nice testimonials, but is there something measurable that we can show here? And the first study was incredible, almost total reduction of symptoms of PTSD within 30 days. That was repeated. There was yet a third study. It took a little bit longer on that group, but it was still phenomenal in terms of how fast the symptoms would somewhat disappear, would almost completely disappear. And then you have the testimonials of how the people were able to focus on their studies, to improve their life, to actually become gainfully employed, where before they couldn't because their mental state was so disrupted from the traumas that they had experienced in their life in Africa. So then you look at that and say, if we could expand this on a larger scale, if we could have an organization so that refugee camps, schools, whoever, universities, whoever is interested, could easily have this available. I hate to keep going on, but basically the only other alternative you have for healing these individuals is therapy. Well, there's hardly any therapists, and it's extremely costly. If you have something that's a do-it-yourself technique that is so effective, it's just the possibilities of changing life and giving Africa really a positive boost that they can take a great direction, not be held back by the traumas of the past, which exist all over the continent.
But it exists everywhere.
Well, that's true.
We all have that, and again, it's given ourselves that opportunity to engage in, I say to people, don't worry about being in therapy, but engage in that therapeutic process to make a difference in the world and in the difference of yourself. But it's kind of like comes back to this notion of, we're talking about business, of being a guy in business who talks about social entrepreneurial work. And again, the dual impact that it really has for everyone around you, but then you being that person, making that difference in the world that you're wanting to create for yourself, and how powerful that is. And I mentioned last week about, by the way, you're listening to KRUU FM 100.1 on your FM dial, Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry. Today we're talking again to Jim Davis regarding social entrepreneurial and a whole lot of other fun topics. And I just wanted to bring in this great documentary I saw last week about, I think it was called So Good, So Right, regarding this really famous carpet manufacturer, of all people. And he didn't care a lick about the environment or anything else. He was interested in making money, and he was one of the most successful carpet manufacturers in the country. Huge business, huge amount of money. One of the most successful people around. And he got introduced to environmentalism, yes, to make a difference, but also what he found by making a difference is that he could make more money. And by being environmental, if you could be environmental and it could save you energy costs, yes, you're doing good, but you're also making more money, or in that case, saving more money, or you're able to manufacture, in his case, those carpets in a way that's far more efficient and economical, and he can make more money and make a difference. I'm having this discussion with my brother, who's come up with this wonderful invention, which is called Smart Catch. And I highly recommend everybody take a look at smartcatch.com. And what my brother's actually doing, Rob Terry, who used to be in Fairfield, came up with this idea of, yes, the oceans are being overfished. And if there's some way to attach cameras to nets and other kinds of ways to do it, then the fishermen could see what they could catch. The problem, fishermen are not necessarily the most environmental people. But when you take in a load of fish that you can't then use, it costs you tons and tons of money, and you can't fish. And it costs you money. And if I know what I'm catching and I'm not catching the right things, or doing the right things, then I could actually save money and be more productive by doing the right thing. And I think it's an interesting notion for all of us to consider. And so, sorry to jump away from here, Jim.
It's an interesting idea. I hope that works out. It's another entrepreneurial business, and it makes money, but it has a good social impact at the same time.
Huge impact. My brother was just much more interested in just making a difference. And I'm like, look at both sides, because that's what really matters, is if I can make a difference and make money and help other people to make money. And by their making money, then they're making a difference. So again, that economy of scale, like you're talking about in Africa, where I could put in a little bit of money and help a lot of people. And then those people, it's like planting seeds, then help their family and their friends and everyone around them, which impacts the world.
And it does. And the particular angle that PTSD Relief Now and African PTSD Relief have is that in Africa in particular, because there's such a large percentage of people who have been traumatized by either war or the uprooted societies that resulted from ongoing wars, that really in order to be in a position to start a productive life, you have to address this disruption of the PTSD in the everyday life of the people. So once that is taken care of, then all those other things unfold. Of now they can be happy, positive, interact with other people in a more responsible way, more positive way. They can actually finish their studies, get productive jobs, contribute to society. But really there's sort of this linchpin in the beginning, or fulcrum, that you have to get the leverage over on, that to get them through
You
the
gotta
PTSD,
disrupt.
you've got to disrupt those bad patterns from the
It's
past.
like if
So
you're in a pain cycle, you've got to disrupt the pain enough so you can start healing. Otherwise, it never.
great analogy. Great analogy.
Yeah. But, I think it's also interesting of thinking again, this notion of moving forward. Again, I disrupt the pattern, whatever the pattern is, my depression, my anxiety, whatever it is, so I can then create a new future. It's not that I'm focused on that past. I'm focused on what I'm now doing with that. And I always say trauma isn't what happened. It's what we did to ourselves and are still doing to ourselves now. That is the trauma. And so how are we disrupting that trauma to create a new cycle, a new way of being, is really which we're giving people that opportunity. But you also had that opportunity. We talked last week, for example, personally, about you being 40 feet away from the Boston Marathon bombing.
Correct. Yes.
And in fact, I noticed on your wrist, even today,
Yep.
right? What are you wearing?
It says Boston Strong, 2013. So it's in solidarity with those others who were there, especially those who were killed or injured.
Absolutely.
And it's a reminder to me, and it's just because it's something. It's an event that shapes your life.
Absolutely. And you can't compare one trauma to another because it really doesn't matter. I talk about trauma and this resilience factor that we develop. You developed a resilience factor by meditating, and so when you went through this incongruity you were not expecting, a violated expectation, which created this trauma. Oh my God, this thing's happening. The most beautiful, wonderful moments of somebody's life, and then all of a sudden their legs are literally blown off, and you're 20 feet away from this. And how do you create something from that event? What's really interesting is trauma a lot of times is that incongruity. It's that dissociation that we have from what's going on. If I'm a soldier and somebody's shooting at me, that's almost expected, and that's not what's causing the trauma. What's often common causing the trauma is what's not expected, like my friend getting hurt, who I can't protect.
Right.
Or there's a fire in the room and I'm not a fireman. I go, oh my God, what do I do? But you, knowing how to deal with fires, puts out some water and it's like you're fine. You're creating something from that to make a difference. And so you are wearing that in solidarity, but you're also doing something to make a difference today.
Well, and that's why I got involved with PTSD relief now in a more serious way, because it was something that I felt personally that I had a technique. It wasn't just psychological studies. I know that this works and it's helpful. And I can't tell you if it's just purely the psychology of giving one a different perspective on life so they can move forward, or if there's a physiological basis to that, where there's new pathways in the brain that are created.
Absolutely.
That
Both.
allows that. It could be both.
Yeah.
But that is the result, that you have the ability to move forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. We're once again, another fascinating show whizzes by here. And is there anything else you'd like to say to close today? Thank you so much for being here, Jim. You're fantastic.
If people are interested, they can go to ptsdreliefnow.org and find out more about the organization and how they can participate.
Absolutely. And if you're wanting to make a difference in your life, look at the next stages for yourself. Because trauma, again, happens to all of us. And it's, again, not what is that trauma's and refocusing on that, but what do we want to create from that now? How can we learn and grow from that? So what can we do to take ourselves to the next stage? I talk about this accident where I almost died a few years ago, February 2006. And what do I create from that so that I can make a greater difference in the world, which is what I'm doing. The stories of our lives aren't what's important. It's what we create from those stories. Look at your story today and what you're willing to create from it. Everyone have a great day. Bye.